I'd just like to give a little shout out to young Samuel in the sound room doing DPO. Like, we've been short a few people this week and Samuel stepped up to the mark. If you didn't notice any problems with the screens today, that's because Samuel did an awesome job, mate. Awesome job. Just so good. No supervision, all by himself. Now he's got supervision. Now he doesn't need it. But anyway, no supervision, all by himself. Missing kids space. But little Samuel, great job. Great job. Let's pray. Father, we come to your word, and we don't do that lightly. But we thank you, our Father, that we can come and honour you and share of you and learn from you. And no matter what I say, Lord, I pray your Spirit may speak to each and every one of us in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, today we start our new series called Deep Cleaning. And it's a series around like some of the things that some of us suffer, whether we're Christian or not Christian, some of these ingrained struggles that we may have. And they be struggle, they be sin, whatever it may be. But some of the things that just seem so difficult to get over, to overcome. And so over these next number of weeks, we're going to be seeking to provide a bit of a toolbox in each week about how to overcome the particular topic of the day. Today's topic is offence. And not the ones around your house, but the OFF one, is the offence. We're also covering such things as shame and power, and I think pride and pornography. Now, just to let you know, the porn one is next week, so if that's an issue for you or some members of your family that you feel may not be appropriate, then that's fine. Our kids go out there. There will be a program during that session next week, particularly for the youth in the youth space area, which we have semi-regularly, and there'll be something organised for them next week. But just to give you a little heads up in that space. But today we talk about overcoming offence. And I read definition, you go, offence is like something where you get hurt or annoyed feelings, where people have maybe been rude or shown no respect, whether that's real or whether it's just been your perception. The Bible uses the word in the New Testament, the Greek word scandalon, and it's the idea of a trigger. Like a stick in a mouse trap, the old-fashioned mouse traps, stick in a mouse trap, hit the stick and the mouse trap goes boom and whatever is captured. It's the idea of something happening and where there's this big reaction. And you know what offence can be like that? Where there's this small thing happens and there can be a big reaction. Maybe justified, depending on the offence, of course. And so the scriptures use the word scandalon, and where it's meant to bring about captivity. And often with these ingrained struggles and maybe sins, they're like being captured by them. I want to start off by looking at a word that's in Proverbs 19:11. I keep saying 29. Proverbs 19:11. A person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offence. Can't even spell, can I? An offence. Offences could be small. That so-and-so who cut you off as you were coming to church today. The one who just has a little go at you about how you raise your children. The one who who was invited along with lots of other people to some sort of celebration, whether it be, a big dinner or Christmas or whatever, and they bring nothing, if anything, a little bit maybe, but they seem to eat a lot and take home a fair bit too. There's these little things, the people who just don't say thank you when you give something, offer something, or help somewhere. The people who don't say thank you. This has little offences, but of course, there are some really big things. Things that, can traumatise us. Where there's the abuse, where there's the violence, where there's the theft, where there's the constant lying about who you are. There's those big things as well. And the result of all of these things tends to be it just eats you up. Eats you up inside. It's got those triggers that have gone boom, and you are captive, and it eats you up, and your thoughts are there. And it seems like you are just unable to offer the grace that we've been singing about compared to the grace that we have received. This verse in Proverbs 19 talks about overlooking. It's the word overlook. It's the word pass over. We often have roads, have passovers, and we even have ones for koalas and other wild animals where they build a bridge to pass over the road. And it's the idea here is as you would look higher and pass over the offence. And the grammar, I'm not great on grammar, but the books tell me, the grammar, especially Hebrew, the grammar is, it's like we read it, a person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offence. The grammar says to overlook an offence is the subject of this parable verse. So if you can overlook it, then the anger doesn't occur. Like the trap hasn't happened. It's not saying, be patient and you overlook an offence. It's saying, no, overlook an offence and it is to your glory. That yields patience. We see not only there, we see that it's not trying to say offence isn't real. Like we've probably all been offended in little ways, and some particularly have been offended in massive ways. And the scriptures do not seek to pretend those things don't happen. The scriptures realise that as a result, they do eat you up. The scriptures realise that these things stifle us and hold us back. And often with that, there is the need for a decision to somehow to let go. And in this verse talks about it, to overlook, to pass over. The quote below is written by some French philosopher who was great at geometry and algebra as well as a philosopher. How do these guys do these things? I don't know. But anyway, like a famous French philosopher, whenever anyone has offended me, I try to raise my soul so high that the offence cannot reach me. What a great, you might say, rephrasing of the Proverbs verse. I try to raise my soul so high that the offence cannot reach me. Someone else might take the low road, but I'm still going to take the high road. Why would we do that? Why would we do that? I think the answer is pretty simple. We might say, life's too short. But I think it's more than that. I think it's life's too short And God's calling is too big to live life offended. Life's too short, and God's calling is too big to live life offended. You know, Jesus calls us to be salt and light. Jesus calls us to be his ambassadors. Jesus calls us to be his ministers of reconciliation. Jesus calls us to become more like him. Jesus calls us to reflect his nature and his character and offer his comfort, his words, his truth, his gospel. And so life's too short, and the call of God on our lives is far too big to live with this offence, holding us back, keeping us down, weighing upon us so heavily. So let's look at a couple of things. Let's talk about the easy ones, the little offences. And Proverbs, Ephesians tells us this: always be humble and gentle, and be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. So just in case you didn't get it, you need to be patient with me and make allowance for me, okay? And I will seek to do the same too. But we need to make allowance for one another because look, I am far from perfect, and you're not too bad, but I am a long way from perfect, and we need to make allowance for one another. Sometimes we get caught in saying something that maybe we shouldn't, and we need to say sorry, and I need to say sorry, or you might need to say sorry to someone, whatever it might be. But I think we need to be fair on this. Like, someone offends me, I can tend to judge them on what they've said or done. But if I offend someone, I want to be judged on my intentions, not necessarily what I've said or done. Hence, the scriptures say, make allowance for each other's faults. Make allowance for each other's faults because of your love, for that love you've received. Make allowance for their faults. So when that guy, girl who cut you off in the driving, it's not about you. It's not about you. When someone says something, maybe you need to think, okay, what's happening in their life? What sort of bad day are they having? Maybe we need to have more compassion and thoughtfulness rather than immediately judging their actions or their words, when we would certainly prefer to be judged on our intention. Might have come across like that, but what I really intend, and I'm really having a bad day, and I really didn't mean that, and I'm really a nice guy, please give me the benefit of the doubt. And I think it's true, and I've said to people over many years, it's like, rarely do I find anybody is particularly trying to offend me. Rarely. I might feel, oops, that wasn't nice, that wasn't good, but rarely are they seeking or intending to offend. We need to seek to walk in the shoes of other people so that we may make allowance for them and give them the benefit of the doubt, because life is too short. And if we spend our life building a wall building a wall of offence. This, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. Life's too short because God's got bigger things for us to do than seek to build these walls of offence. The adventure of the mission of the gospel of Jesus Christ is far too big to be distracted by us seeking to build wall upon wall upon, or brick upon brick upon brick to make a wall upon wall upon wall. You get the drift. It's too big. Life's too short. God's calling is too big to live a life just of offence. And so with God's help, we can make allowance. We can give benefit of the doubt. We can seek to understand where they're coming from, realising that it's not always all about me. Maybe sometimes their day's not good, their week's not good, whatever it might be. It's not all about me. And yet sometimes we build brick upon brick and we spend some of our life, and some people inordinate amount of life, taking offence and building literally almost a fence as a result. Make allowance because of your love. Be patient and humble. Give the benefit of the doubt. Seek to show the love of Jesus, and with his help, we can overcome these little offences. But we need to acknowledge there are really big offences in this world, where people have been terribly betrayed, where there has been incredible character assassination, where there has been violence upon violence, abuse upon abuse. And these are big things. And these are big offences. And it's a little, in a sense, flippant to say, make allowance. Make allowance. Give the benefit of the doubt. Because such things are incredibly deep and difficult. And maybe right now you've got someone in mind where you or someone you love has suffered in that way. We have a choice. We have a choice. We can rehearse the abuse and relive the abuse over and over and over and over and over. And sometimes that seems to be what happens, and sometimes that's hard not to do, but in a sense we have a real choice. We can either rehearse it, or we can go through the process of releasing it. And like the Proverbs verse says, it's to your glory, to pass over it. So we can rehearse, or we can release. We can go through the process of seeking to lean on God, to pray to God, to seek to do what is exactly the right thing. Colossians, which seems in a sense to build on the Ephesians verse, it starts off with similar wording. It says, make allowance for each other's faults, but then also, and forgive anyone who offends you. The context, remember the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Look, it's just a few words. And they're powerful and, in a sense, confronting words if you've suffered so terribly. But we have a choice. We can rehearse or we can release. It seems to me that there are a number of facets to this forgiveness. There is, like it's talking about here, in a sense, there's this spiritual facet of forgiveness. Where we can say, it's like, Lord, I know what it costs to forgive me. And I can tell you, I can tell you I've broken every one of the 10 Commandments. I know what it cost to forgive me. And so here we have the scripture saying, remember what the cost was for your forgiveness and seek to forgive others who have perpetuated offence and abuse and violence or whatever it might be on you. Remember what you did to God. Remember it was your sin that meant he was crucified and died on that cross. Naked and forsaken because of me. Remember the cost of your forgiveness. And by the grace of God, seek to forgive. So there is this spiritual component, you might say, of forgiveness. Spiritual facet. But there's also an emotional facet where we might come to the point where we can say, yes, I forgive, and mean it. But where it's a process of seeking to work through the pain of the offence, a process of seeking to let go and not and surrender the right to retaliate. A process where, with the support or help of others, professional or otherwise, where you seek to resolve the emotional aspect of forgiveness. And it's a journey. It's not something to be, I think, treated lightly. It's not something to be skipped over. It's not something to be suppressed. But it's a journey. And of course, there's the practical aspect of forgiveness, whatever that may look like, where you seek to pray and maybe serve others or even the one who has perpetuated the offence. I think of the great biblical example of Joseph, hated like crazy by his brothers, who decided the best thing that they could do was to murder him. But such was the level of hate. Then they ended up with a slightly better idea. They wouldn't murder him. They would profit from him by selling him off to slavery into Egypt. And then if you know the story, whilst in Egypt, things were good, bad. One of the times he ended up in prison because of a false accusation by Potiphar's wife, and he ended up in prison, and he was in there for ages, and then he came out, and eventually, long story short, he became second in charge of the nation of Egypt under Pharaoh. Then one day, these brothers of hatred turn up. because there'd been a famine right throughout the region, and Joseph, under the vision of God, said to Pharaoh, we need to, in these good times, put some grain away because there's a drought coming. And so they did. The rest of the region, like Joseph's brothers, didn't do so, and so they were starving. So they came to Egypt and they ended up before Joseph. Didn't recognise him. I don't know, older, beard, fancy clothes as Egyptians wear, whatever, I don't know. Didn't recognise him, but he recognised them. Like, if he had, for those many years, continued to rehearse the offence on him, I think what he would have done was murder them, had them put to death slowly. But not only had he given up his right to retaliate, there was practical aspect of his forgiveness. He served them. He gave them grain. He invited them, and eventually the whole family and others, they came down to Egypt and they settled there and, had the best of everything there and blah, 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 blah. So, here we have this story of practical forgiveness of the offence that he had suffered, where he released it. And he not only just didn't retaliate by murder and then send them away to starve back in their homeland, but he helped them and he served them and he showed them. And we're reminded towards the end of the book of Genesis where it says, like, you guys, you meant it for evil, but God has used this for good to bring about the salvation of many others. See, life is too short, and God's call is too big to live a life offended. Joseph's a great example. So we've got a deep clean toolbox. And I'll just recap. I've got 6 things that I've mentioned in part, and I've managed to get them all to start with R after a little effort. Okay? We need to raise our soul. We need to not only raise our soul, we need to revisit our call, because our call's too big to live there. Our call's too big. We need to remember that we are all imperfect. We need to release the memories. We need to bring about a restoring grace through forgiveness. And we need to recognise this is going to take time. There is a recovering journey that we are involved in. So, we're going to move into the Lord's table, and as part of that we're going to watch a video in a moment. But we're reminded that we are people who are meant to be people of reconciliation. And the reconciliation that we're meant to provide is the reconciliation between certainly God and people, but also between people and people. 2 Corinthians 5 talks about you've been created anew so that you may be my ministers of reconciliation. Sometimes here we've said this little phrase, you are either a missionary or you're a mission field. That's it. You're a missionary or a mission field. And as part of being a mission field, we need to be people, ministers, people of reconciliation. And that happens because we have committed sin and the ultimate offence against our Father. And He has reached out His hand of forgiveness to each and every one, each and every person over each and every age and each and every tribe and nation. He has reached out His hand of forgiveness, and in fact He reached out both hands on the cross of Calvary. He said, I offer forgiveness. I offer forgiveness. And that's the forgiveness that we also should show other people who need the forgiveness of God, but who may also need our forgiveness for whatever reason. But as people of God, we're not only meant to be, we're either missionaries or a mission field, so we're missionaries. We're also part of a broader family. We're part of a Baptist family here in Queensland. We're part of a Baptist family here in Australia and indeed worldwide. But the Baptist family here in Australia has a mission organisation. Some of you who have been around a while, and if you've been involved in Baptist things, would have known it in years gone by as the ABMS, Australian Baptist Missionary Society. And then they went trendy a few years ago and became Global Interaction. Ring a bell for some? Became Global Interaction. Well, they've just decided to change their name again, but the mission is the same. And just want to show this video, if we can figure that out. We show this video to just talk about briefly this change of name, but the mission is still the same. And then we'll continue on with our gathering around the table. Thank you.
Who is Baptist Mission Australia? We're Jesus followers, good news sharers, people lovers. We're goers, risk takers, adventurers and senders.
We're the intercultural workers on the ground.
And the people partnering with them in churches across the nation.
We're committed to coming alongside and meeting people where they are.
We're for relationships, building bridges and finding common ground.
We're about word and deed.
We're about inviting people to meet Jesus and allow them to see and follow him in ways that make sense to them, in their own distinctive ways. We're for mission here and over there. Why? Because Australian Baptists are a mission people.
Who is Baptist Mission Australia?
We're storytellers. We're God's storytellers.
We are 140 years of faith stories.
We're prayers and givers.
Encouragers and doers.
We're partners.
We're disciples committed to disciple making.
We are for asking questions, for making mistakes, and for trying again.
We're building on an inspiring past and investing in the next generations.
We're about new ideas, old truth,
And a hope that never changes.
We're about speaking in their language and learning their ways in order to communicate the way in a way that makes sense to them.
We're for taking time and standing with locals so their communities can be better places.
We're for moving outside our comfort zone.
And even changing time zones.
Who is Baptist Mission Australia?
We're you, we're her, we're him, we're them.
We're from many places and different cultures.
We're all of us working together, embracing God's gracious invitation to mission.
Listeners, learners, alongside us, ordinary people with the mission of God in our hands. Simply, we're the intercultural mission of the Australian Baptist movement. And that's why we've changed our name from Global Interaction to Baptist Mission Australia. And we invite you to join us to pray.
So yeah, Global Interaction has got a new name. Just thought it would be important to let everyone know that. But also as we